It's the times that we're in right now. You get a ring, you don't even get to bask in all the glory. Sure, these are the pictures and the images from last night of OKC taking home that Larry O'Brien trophy, winning the NBA championship in 7 games over the Pacers. But we're on to what's next. Sure, they won their first championship since moving over to Oklahoma City, but they're young. The youngest NBA champion since the 1977 Portland Trail Blazers. So that has us thinking of maybe a dynasty is in the making in Oklahoma City. The average age, 25.6 years old. They have a guy in SGA who was the MVP, who was the finals MVP, the leading scorer of the league, and they have so many draft picks as Sam Presti has built up a team that has a potential to do a lot of damage in the future. Our NBA writer Sam Quinn tapped in with us now. And Sam, we have that as the precursor because you have an article up on CBSSports.com right now on why the Thunder are set up to be the next dynasty. So I want to get into kind of the nuts and bolts of that because you call this a launching point for the Thunder. Why is that?
Yeah, the name of the game here is cost control, right? Especially when we're talking about a dynasty in the apron eras. So like a year or so ago, I was on here and you were asking me about this same topic for the Boston Celtics. And what I said was that they were set up to keep the team together for maybe another year, maybe another 2 years. They could have added to that one title, but it wasn't going to be a long-term run with that group. The difference with the Thunder, so the way they're set up, everyone's under contract for next year. They're not going to have any tax issues. They're going to be able to keep the team together for at least one more year. What happens after that is Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams will sign presumably max contracts. They're going to get more expensive, but think about all of those draft picks that they've accumulated over the last, half decade or so. That's where those picks start to come into play, because what they're going to be able to do as those stars get expensive is cycle out their older expensive role players, replace them with cheap young rookies, and keep the team together, or at least keep the core together for longer than pretty much anybody else could during this apron era, right? Like, we're seeing this every year now. Teams are offloading expensive players because the aprons are making it so prohibitive to keep more than, say, 2 max players or this much money or this many core players. The Thunder aren't going to have necessarily that problem. They're going to be able to maintain depth for the foreseeable future. So that's when you can really start talking about, say, 3, 4, 5 championships in a 10-year span.
Sam, this all sounds good in theory. Okay, we have all these draft picks, but you need to hit on those draft picks. You need those players to become serviceable NBA players. We know that J-Dub, we know that Chet Holmgren are serviceable players. So when you look at that big three, like monetarily wise, can they truly afford to give the max to both J-Dub and Chet and then re-up SGA when he's due and then still have the pieces around them to still win?
So the short answer is yes. The long answer is it's complicated. So right now, Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams are eligible for new contracts at around 25% of the cap. That's the max for fourth-year players, which they're going to be when they sign. If either of them makes All-NBA or if either of them wins Defensive Player of the Year next year, both of which are very possible, that number goes up to 30%. Suddenly they're more expensive and you have to pay that in the back end when you're talking about your role players who, it's harder to keep in the apron era. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, by winning MVP, is already eligible for the Supermax. The key is he's not going to actually be able to kick in on that money until 2 years later. So they do have a little bit of a window to figure this out. They might need these guys to leave a little bit on the table to help keep the role players in place. But these are with 3 max players. As long as you're hitting on your rookies, that's going to be the key. So look at their salary structure. Isaiah Hartenstein, team option after next year. Lou Dort, team option after next year. Cason Wallace, eligible for a rookie extension 2 years from now. I think you have to wonder, are those guys going to be on the team long term? Are you going to be able to keep the ultra premium expensive role players? But with the stars in place, if you hit on those draft picks, you're going to be okay. That's going to be the key for the Thunder moving forward.
A lot of ifs there. And when I think about the big three, I think of the What a Pro Wants commercial where they're singing, which made me think of you, Sam. I heard you have some bars. If you so want to right now, would you like to give any type of little rhyme, any sort of rap to kind of wrap up in the bow this Thunder situation for us?
Not at this hour, man. Do you know how little sleep I got last night? Last night was not a great night for those of us in this field that maybe do a little bit of pre-writing to let you guys beneath the curtain a little bit. Haliburton's injury really threw me for a loop, so I don't think I'm working on enough rest to give you any bars today.
Okay, not today, but one day we will get bars from Sam Quinn is what I'm hearing right now. That's how I'm going to take it. You mentioned Tyrese Haliburton, and I want to touch on him and the Pacers and maybe how they move forward, because this late in the year, final game of the season, Achilles injuries will knock him out for quite some time next year. How does that maybe affect how the Pacers will now move in the offseason? First, I'm thinking of a guy like Miles Turner and his contract. Are you more willing to pay him the money because you're going to need him? Or do you say, okay, I don't know what our team is now next year?
So here's the prevailing question with the Pacers right now. All indications throughout the finals were that the Pacers were going to be willing to pay the luxury tax next season. That's very, very rare for them. They haven't done it in 20 years. The Pacers are known as one of the thriftier organizations in the NBA. I wonder if Haliburton being out for a year changes that calculus for them, right? It's easy for us to just say ownership is going to be able to throw around as much money as necessary. In that market, if you're giving up the revenue that comes from a long playoff run, it's not quite as certain, right? So Miles Turner is a free agent. I don't know if he's going to be able to drum up the sort of market that he'll need to potentially leave Indiana, right? The only cap space team right now is Brooklyn. I don't think Brooklyn's going to be in on him, but that can change depending on what Brooklyn's plans are. Detroit is reportedly interested. They don't have the cap space right now. They could make it through a couple of other smaller moves. I don't think Turner leaving is necessarily the issue. What I'm worried about if I'm Indiana is, do they re-sign Miles Turner but then offload somebody else just to duck the tax? So look at the bench, right? Obi Toppin at around $14 million a year. TJ McConnell at around 10. Are those players that are vulnerable? Are those players that other teams could potentially poach for a low price because the Pacers are cost conscious? The short answer is we don't know. We're going to see that over the next week or two. We're going to find out how willing they are to pay the tax in a world in which they might not make the playoffs next year. I'll throw something here out, though. The Pacers made a very small trade during the finals. It's a rare thing to do. Not many teams make trades while they're playing in the finals. What they did was they traded this year's first-round pick, number 23 overall, to the New Orleans Pelicans to get control of their 2026 first-round pick back. They gave that pick up in the Pascal Siakam trade. Now they don't have to worry about losing a pick in a year that Haliburton's out. If they're bad, at least they benefit from it.
So what do they do at guard, though, specifically at point guard? Because we've seen a whole lot of TJ McConnell, and he played well this series, but to trot him out for 82 games and expect him to want him to be the player that we saw in the finals seems like that's a tough ask. So what do they do there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think TJ McConnell is a player who's best used off the bench for limited minutes. He's very high intensity. I'm expecting him to stay in a bench role. So what I would expect is that Andrew Nembhard is going to move to point guard. Benedict Mathurin is going to start at shooting guard. And they might add another guard either on the minimum or, depending on how much Miles Turner costs, maybe you use the taxpayer mid-level exception. You chase a guy like Tyus Jones or his brother Trey Jones, somebody who has a high assist-to-turnover ratio, who can sort of maintain your style of play. Those guys aren't the level of shooter that Haliburton is. They're not as explosive in transition. But you can bring in sort of a transitional point guard, someone to help keep the team moving for a year. And then when Haliburton comes back a year later, then you kind of move on from those guys. But given the way their books are set up, everyone they have is important, right? There's no dead salary that they can just say, oh, this is the guy we're going to trade for another point guard. No, everybody's essential. So you have to keep this group together and find a way to add to it on the cheap. That's not easy, but they did just make the NBA Finals. If you're a point guard, Rick Carlisle is a coach that you want to play for. He obviously uses his bench more than most coaches. He's very friendly to backup ball handlers. I would expect them to be in the low end of the free agent market at point guard.
Tough decisions to be made here in the offseason, which is now officially upon us now that the NBA season and we have a champ crowned over in OKC. Sam Quinn, thank you very much. I hope the next time I see you, we can get some bars, but I know it'll happen one day sooner than later. Talking about later and looking at the future for the odds to win the 2026 NBA Final, you'll have to go down to the drop note to find the Pacers sitting at 45-1, but it is the big-time favorite, the Thunder, but it gets a running back sitting at plus 220 for their odds. Their running mate in the Cavs, who were great in the East, 8-1. to win it all. My Magic, shout out 13-1. I love it.